He's a veteran. He's a guy who's proven. He's still young. He came out real young. He's only 24 years old, even though he's already logged 3 years in the league. So that's a young player as well. I'm not going to sweat the injuries that he had last year. He's not an injury-prone player. All right, he had a couple injuries, missed a couple of games. That stuff happens. They filled a definitive need on this team. They had to pay a big price to sign him. And again, I think that's a good sign because, Howie might have been leading us down a primrose path, but he made it sound like we're not going to be dictated to by others around the National Football League who are setting these standards of contracts positionally. He jumped in and said, all right, I'll pay the price of poker. What are you raising? Okay, I'm in. We are live here on Birds 365, your Eagles recap on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. You got the Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald. I just sent out the tweet, John, that said we'll be talking about a big Eagles day today because they got two very big players that they're banking on for big contributions next year. Big night for Howie Roseman, and you were down there for it. What was the excitement level like? Amongst you media guys, you're not allowed to cheer. You're not allowed to.
We're not. We don't get too excited, but I will put it this way, Jody. This was after the fact, so I'm going to tell you a quick story. I should have known what was up. I get to the NovaCare complex at about 6:30ish, and I'm getting to my cubicle. I'm getting set up, saying hello to everybody, and around the corner with a big hello comes Peter King. And I should have known as soon as I, said to her hellos, I said, well, what are you doing here, Peter? Can choose anywhere he wants to go, obviously. 31 other teams. We know how many teams had multiple first-round picks. The Jets and the Giants had 2 in the top 10. You had Super Bowl contenders later in the draft, like the Packers and the Chiefs. They had 2 first-round picks, and he chose to come to Philadelphia. So I didn't get to see him after, but I wanted to ask him, and I was going to say, did you get a heads up that there was going to be some fireworks? Because I think he got a heads up there was going to be some fireworks.
You think so? You think they're tipping their hand to Peter King, huh?
I do. I think there was, and I should have known at the time, maybe a little bit Oliver Stone-ish, but I thought it was strange that, hey, we're not ready, right, Jody? We're not ready. Why is Peter King showing up? So Peter was there, and then they make the targeted trade up, which I'm very happy with because that's what I predicted on Sports Illustrated, right to number 13, get ahead of Baltimore.
And here on Birds 365, I said, give me one guy you think the Eagles will come away from tomorrow night's draft with us, or later tonight's draft when we said it yesterday. And that's exactly where you went, moving up basically number 13. You thought it might have been 11 or 12 or whatever, but they were able to do it with only needing to leapfrog the Ravens by 1. But you said Jordan Davis, and he was the Philadelphia Eagles selection.
Yeah, and so I saw that one coming. I did not see A.J. Brown coming. That one, Howie was playing us a little bit. Last time we got to talk to Howie, he went on this big diatribe about the wide receiver market and said, well, we don't want to be like everybody else. In other words, trying to lay out the groundwork, like we're not going to pay these guys $25 million. And then he pays the guy $25 million. So huge upgrade. I mean, there's no question there. And then we're going to have plenty of time to talk in the coming weeks and things like that about the fit and what the Eagles have to do to take advantage of this particular player. But the coaching staff has to be very happy today. And Philadelphia's not going to like this, but I'm going to say it early in the show and get the hate out of the way very, very early. You guys got a pretty good general manager.
How he plays the draft day game. I've been saying this before Birds 365 ever existed on WIP or CBS. That's if you had to list all the traits of a general manager, and you and I have discussed this, people think that the only thing that you draft, you judge a general manager on is the draft. No, it's a massive job. It intakes a lot of different responsibilities, a lot of things you have to do. But one of them, and it's a key one, is draft day maneuvering. And Howie Roseman is one of the best in the business. He's like top 2 or 3, if not sitting at the very top of the entire list of all the general managers in the league. He plays the Monty Hall, let's make a deal, draft day game, as well as any other GM in the entire league.
Yeah, he really does. You never talk about valuation. You know, you go down to the very end of the draft. We talked about the Saints. I mean, let's start with the Saints. I mean, they make the trade with the Eagles. You're scratching your head. And then they trade up on draft night and they take Chris Olave. You're still scratching your head. You don't know what's going on with the New Orleans Saints or what they're trying, trying to accomplish. I look at a rookie GM like Kwesi Adopa-Mensah, who, I hope does very well, but he's a Cherry Hill guy, local guy, but he went down 20 picks, Jody, to go up 14 in the second round, essentially for a third round pick. I mean, that's disaster level territory. If you look at Jimmy Johnson's trade chart, I know because he's an analytics darling. One of our friends, Brad Spielberger, tries to frame it like it's a smart decision. No, it's not a smart decision. And he picked a safety. And oh, by the way, Kyle Hamilton was on the board at 12, where I believe they were picking. Yeah. So there are these GMs, and there's just 2 examples. They don't know what the heck they're doing when it comes to valuation of the board. We always talk about valuation versus evaluation. Howie always gets the first part of that right. Doesn't always get the second part of that right. And that encompasses, obviously, the personnel department, Andy Weidel. And we'll see. I think Jordan Davis has got a chance to be a really good player. And you could see the one thing Nick Sirianni said about A.J. Brown. No projection is the term he used. No projection. You know what he is. And that's what we've been talking about this entire offseason, Jody. You need a wide receiver, but you need a veteran wide receiver, a guy who's done it before, a guy you can count on, a guy you can lean on. Well, they were able to get that. They had to spend a lot of money to do it. But, I mean, from a player standpoint, the Eagles got a lot better on both sides of the football yesterday in the first round.
One on each side, one offense, one defense, which is a nice balance. One projection guy, one given guy as a wide receiver. But I do want to get to the whole given thing on A.J. Brown in just a second. So, again, Howie did a great job of balancing. One's a future guy. Yeah. How much is Davis going to contribute this year with Hargrave and Fletcher Cox in front of him? He's going to be part of a rotation. Can he become a 3-down guy somewhere down the road for the Eagles? I think we saw a little evidence of that. The fact that he was able to drop 20 pounds before the combine and go out and blow everybody away with his athleticism. So that's trending in the right direction. But let's go A.J. Brown first. You mentioned that he's no projection. It's a given. Yes and no. He's actually gone backwards in his 3 years in the National Football League. His third year was his least productive year. Had an injury, cost him a handful of games, so you knew the numbers were going to come down, but they came down pretty precipitously. He had better years, year 1 and year 2 in the league than year number 3. I think when you have to judge him, and I'm going to ask you to judge him in a second, you have to judge on all 3. You can't just look at last year. You can't just look at his best year, which you could argue was either his first or second year. No, it's a combination of all the 3 when you're judging A.J. Brown. And I when as soon as they made the deal, I started to think about this in my mind. I want you to do the same. A.J. Brown's not a top 10 receiver in the league, is he?
No. And I've said that pretty consistently. I don't think DK Metcalf is a top 10 receiver in the league. I think people get enamored with big names and you start doing the math. And I said, who started this boom at the wide receiver position? It was Devontae Adams. It was Tyreek Hill. It was Stephon Diggs. It was sort of boom, boom, boom. You're not those guys. Those guys are those guys are in that top 10 you're talking about. And I would say he's the next tier. And I put DK Metcalf in that category as well. Terry McLaurin in that category. Debo's a little bit different because he's so unique, and we know all the problems there. And, does he want to be Debo? Does he want to just be receiver? So there's some issues with him. So, no, I don't think this second group, this second wave is worthy of getting paid what that first wave is. But, that's how this works. And we see it all the time. Most notably, people see it at the quarterback position. For years, it's kind of corrected itself now because the really superstar quarterbacks have gotten up to their contracts and forced their way to making the most money. But for a year, I remember Derek Carr was the first player to get $25 million on his first quarterback. He wasn't the best quarterback. Certainly not a bad quarterback. I remember when Matthew Stafford set the bar. Again, great quarterback, Super Bowl winning quarterback now, but certainly wasn't the best quarterback. Kirk Cousins had that title at one point. Again, very good quarterback, certainly not a superstar quarterback. So contracts are always about timing and circumstance. And that group of receivers is the next group up for their extension. They're coming off their rookie deals. They're going to get overpaid a little bit. And then we'll see where they develop. The one thing about A.J. Brown, he's very close to Jalen Hurts. We know, we saw they have the same agent. They were working out together, a little foreshadowing as well. He's used to playing in a run-first offense with Tennessee and Derrick Henry. All of these things are good parts of this particular acquisition. So maybe he's not going to complain as much if this is, he's not getting as many targets as he could get in other situations. And I think that offense is, and we say it here about Devontae Smith, it limited him from a number standpoint a little bit. So ultimately, if you do become a more high-powered passing offense, and it's pretty clear Nick Sirianni wants to become that, with Jalen Hurts improving, or if not, they're just going to go to somebody else who can do it. So hopefully it works out to the point where the two marry up at some point. But for this particular team, he's so much better than what you've had. I mean, it starts there for me. And you could argue, I think ultimately Devontae Smith is going to be a better receiver than A.J. Brown. That's just my opinion. But right now, it's like you have two ones. Quez Watkins can comfortably sit and I have no issue. I have a big issue if he's your second receiver. No issue as a young player, getting better as the third receiver. So all the dominoes kind of fall into place. And now you don't have to worry about Jalen Reagor. Who knows? He might be gone by the end of tonight or by the end of day 3. It's pretty clear he's not in the plans. So maybe it's even August, but I feel pretty comfortable to say that Jalen's not going to be here next year. And it's good. It's good, Jody.
They got themselves they filled a need, a massive need that we've been talking about ad infinitum here on Birds 365, veteran wide receiver. Knew there was a chance they were going to take a young wide receiver. I was kind of hoping for Garrett Wilson. He comes off the board as early as they did. The Eagles had no shot at a guy like him. At some point, we'll talk about, did they really trade up to get Jordan Davis, or did they trade up to get Williams? And they stepped too late, who went the pick right before they took and that's something we're never going to be straight skinny on. I can guarantee you that's never discussed. And even if they did and came out and swore to it, I don't know that I would believe them. Probably they were going for Jordan Davis, but do we know for a fact the way the timing of the announcements came down? We'll never know because the previous pick has not been made yet. I'll just run them down because I jotted them down this morning. As a matter of fact, I'll give you the guys that I think are the top 10 in the league. And I believe Brown is just outside. There's a group. You said you put them in groups. Well, I got a group of 10 that I think is better than A.J. Brown. Then comes the next tier for me, and it's more than even just a nice round number at 10. I do think there's a division after 10, and Brown could be 11th. He could be somewhere between 11th and 15th for me. Here are my 10. Tell me if you think that A.J. Brown is better than any of these guys. Cooper Kupp.
No.
Justin Jefferson.
No.
Deebo Samuel.
No.
Devontae Adams.
No.
Tyreek Hill.
No.
Stephon Diggs.
No.
Mike Evans.
No.
DeAndre Hopkins.
No.
Jamar Chase.
No.
And I got DJ Metcalf, who you said you don't think he's in the top 10. He's my 10th. Now
he might. I haven't gone through everybody. I have no problem with that list, and I would put you said you had AJ at 11. I wouldn't mind, if you put AJ at 10 and DK at 11, and I'd have to go through the depth charts and see who else might be up there. But
here are the other guys that I just jotted down this morning that I think AJ Brown is right there with. You want to put him ahead because you want to be eagerly optimistic? Okay, fine. It's not like you're stretching. It's debatable. Guys who are in that next group of 10, of which A.J. Brown is certainly one of them. Godwin from Tampa Bay.
You start getting into styles. I wouldn't complain if people put him ahead. I'll say it that way.
Adam Thielen.
Older, certainly was better, but I think he's been injured past couple of years. So I'll give that one to AJ because he's been banged up.
TJ Lockett?
No, I'd go AJ there.
Okay. Mike Williams, Chargers. Eagles had interest in him
Very
if he had
close.
Free agent.
Very close. I think it might get helped by playing with Justin Herbert. I probably lean towards AJ.
CD Lamb.
I take CD Lamb over AJ.
Amari Cooper.
Same reason with Thielen. He was better. I don't think he's better now. I think he's a descending player. So I would put him in the same Thielen camp.
Right. McLaurin.
McLaurin, I think, is better. McLaurin, I think, is the most underrated receiver in football.
Yeah, you're a bigger McLaurin fan than I am. Keenan Allen.
Keenan, he probably was better, but aging player, a lot of tread off the tire. I wouldn't have a problem putting AJ ahead of him right now.
And a guy that the Eagles definitely made a move on, just didn't get him, was Allen Robinson.
Yeah, AJ, I'd take over Allen Robinson.
Yeah,
too many injuries, too many issues. Pretty good list, Jody.
Right. That's the group that he's with, that second group. I don't think he makes the first group, and for me, that was 10 deep. Could he be the first guy of the second group, which means he's just outside the top 10? Yeah, you can make that argument. Is he 2 or 3 into that? So is he like 12 or 13? You can make that argument too. There are a couple guys on the list that I think are close, but I would definitely give the nod to A.J. Brown over them, and you just went through it, and you and I are pretty close on all of them. He's a veteran. He's a guy who's proven. He's still young. He came out real young. He's only 24 years old, even though he's already logged 3 years in the league. So that's a young player as well. I'm not going to sweat the injuries that he had last year. He's not an injury-prone player. All right, he had a couple injuries, missed a couple of games. That stuff happens. They filled a definitive need on this team. They had to pay a big price to sign him. And again, I think that's a good sign because, Howie might have been leading us down a primrose path, but he made it sound like we're not going to be dictated to by others around the National Football League who are setting these standards of contracts positionally. Well, he jumped in and said, all right, I'll pay the price of poker. What are you raising? Okay, I'm in, which is a real good sign if you're a Philadelphia Eagle fan.
And by the way, real quick, before we get to the break, Jody, I do think the Eagles were targeting Jordan Davis, and for this reason, and I do think they had the A.J. Brown trade in the machinations, which again is good to Howie because he had to juggle these two particular trades. And the reason why is the extension. You can't just pick up your phone when you're on the clock and say, all right, let's get this done. Let's hammer out 4 years, $100 million and 57. They've been working on that thing for a while, which Howie kind of intimated and set up, as he talks about. He gets prepared for these types of things. So because of the extension and because of how quickly it came together, I think, let's put it this way. He had if plan A was Jameson Williams, he had the contingency plan locked in. I will say that at the bare minimum. At the bare minimum.
And they got the guy that they were targeting and the guy that they wanted. All right, he's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We're your Mac and Mac Birds 365 guys. First guest of the day, national and eagle-centric. He's a Philly guy, so he's always talking birds. He fills in for us here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, and you read all his national stuff on CBSSports.com. Our buddy Jeff Kerr next on Birds 365.